Okay, hello, welcome to this tutorial, Revit tutorial. Yeah, let's not waste any time. Okay, so today we are modeling this really cool house in Switzerland by Lionel Balmer Architects. So we'll be deconstructing how you might approach this as a beginner in Revit. Don't be intimidated. We will cover as much as possible given our time. Okay, let's jump into it. So I'm going to be pretty brief in this tutorial, enough to cover major concepts. You can always slow down the video, comment your inquiries, or join our channel on WhatsApp to filter your queries into our group channel. I recommend downloading the Revit content package, which I'll provide a link in the video description. This is crucial for understanding or having access to the family templates, which will come handy later on when we do doors, windows, and such. This tutorial assumes that you have at least used AutoCAD before and understand basic drafting tools such as trim and extend, align, etc. If you've used Rhino, even better. If not, do not worry. This tutorial is designed to be approachable by anybody. So learning objectives. So I'm going to go through this kind of like in conundrum simultaneously with each other throughout the whole video, but basic UI functionality, understanding levels, understanding view properties, understanding Revit architecture and structure tab, understanding Revit hierarchy, category, family, type, how Revit communicates and categorizes different geometry. And that's basically it. Okay, let's get into it. So when you first open Revit, you're going to see something like this. You may see something slightly different. You shouldn't though. So what you might do is you would create a new model, and you have a basic architecture construction template here. Usually you would choose whatever architecture template is fine. Click OK, and Revit loads in. Give it a moment. And I will be using my own template, so my Revit might look slightly different to yours, but that doesn't change anything. So I'm going to close out of this because I have a project file already going. So this beginner file will be available to you to follow along. So what I've done to save us some time is I've taken the liberty to import all the different floor plans and basically scale them so they're kind of ready to go to the best of my abilities, as accurate as possible. So let's start with understanding the UI. You have all these tabs at the top. All we're going to worry about really is architecture tab, structure tab, modify tab, and probably the annotate tab later on. These are your AutoCAD drafting tools, basically your hatches, your detail lines, your annotation lines, your dimensions, and whatnot. Callouts. Your architecture tab has your basic geometry, your walls, your doors, your windows, your columns, your roofs, how that functions. So you're going to be spending most of your time in this area. Your structure tab has your beams, your columns, your foundations, and Revit, as mentioned earlier, how Revit functions is a building information modeling software. So as you work through your model, Revit is categorizing each geometry type. You can see on the property or project browser on the left here. If you go into families, you have all these different names: curtain wall system, ducts, doors. Everything is categorized very neatly for you, so at any point in your project, you can sort of revise and kind of understand what kind of floors you have, what kind of walls you have. So that's pretty nice. That's very, very nice. On your right yours may be different. You can take these tabs and kind of move them around. For the sake of this tutorial, I have the properties here. You could kind of push it here. That it might be their default for you guys, but feel free to kind of move that around as you wish. This is not snapping. Okay. No, that's not what I wanted to do. Okay. Where'd that go? Sorry. Okay. So you have your properties, which moved out down here. So you have your properties window here, which basically tells you, first of all, what view you're in, and different information about this view, the underlay, basically how far or how deep the cut plane is, what you're seeing, and so we'll get into this as we go on, but this is very, very important to have this view at all times. Understand this. What else? At the bottom here we have different. We have your scale. So I'm going to change the units. So I'm going to type UN to change the units. I'm just going to change them to millimeters for my purposes. If you work in feet and inches, you can keep it in feet and inches. This is just my preference. So here you have like your basic scale. So every view has its own scale that's adjustable. Here you can set a custom scale. Don't really need to do this right now, but this changes the. If you look at the this section, kind of call out here, or this section annotation. If I change the scale to 1 to 100, it gets larger. So that's kind of an indicator that okay, this is what the scale might be. Revit kind of gives you clues like that. That suggests okay, this is what the scale might be. These come in handy later when we plot our drawings. Detail level, coarse, fine, medium, doesn't really matter right now. Your graphic styles, so typically wireframe, hidden line, shaded. These are going to come in handy later if you've used Rhino. It's the same thing. Here you have your hidden elements. So what happens is when you have a really complex model, you can have the ability to isolate and hide things, and that's going to come. That we may not use that, but that might help come in handy later on. Okay, so let's get started right away. I'm going to, and again, if you have the, as mentioned before, I took the liberty to basically go ahead and scale each drawing, each kind of floor plan of this project to the best of my abilities. So in each view, I already have pre-selected, or I already have these views kind of in place. So something I want to do at the very beginning is I don't want to be able to select this floor plan. It's going to get in the way. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come to the the Modify tab, and I'm going to hit Pin, shortcut PN. And so what's happening now is if I click off, let me just move this, sorry. I can't click it now. And that's happening because if you go down to your right, you see select pin elements is checked. So if I uncheck that, now I can select a pin element and I can unpin it and move it around again. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to undo. And this is very handy. If you pin it and you come here and you just click this little button right here, this little don't select pinned objects, so that guarantees that you're not going to move it. Okay, so I'm going to come here. First I'm going to measure this. So this is about a 435 millimeter wall. So I'm going to go to my architecture tab and click wall. I'm going to take, you're going to have maybe different wall kind of presets from the drop down here. Kind of choose whatever, exterior wall is fine. I'm going to go to edit type. So when this dialog box comes up, this is asking you basically, okay, what kind of wall do you want to make? The first thing you always do is you duplicate. If you don't duplicate, you're going to change this this basically preset wall. You don't want to do that because how Revit works is it works with categories, families, and types. So when you edit type, you want to duplicate so you don't change the original wall. In case you want to make a different version of it later on. So we're just going to call this concrete wall. We're coming here into the structure. We're going to edit the structure. And we don't really care about the finishes here. So what you're seeing here is your core boundaries. So Revit already tells you right here that this is the exterior side of the wall. If you think about the membranes and the assemblies, you can come in here and you can assign each individual membrane of the wall, assign its each individual thickness, what material it is, etc. We don't really care about that right now, so we're going to delete the finish, and we're just going to come in here and go 450 for the structure. And you can always hit the preview. If I assign a material, I could assign like a concrete material. Just type in concrete. Maybe the you'll get like base materials just out of the box. So we'll just go with this one. So because I assigned this material in the preview, if I go hit back out, if I hit this again, now you're seeing in plan what this might look, what this is kind of looking like. I can even go into section. I can even go to section and I can zoom in and I can understand, okay, this is how thick the wall is. So this gives you a nice little preview of kind of what you're doing. If this doesn't make sense to you, just hit the preview and you'll see a visual kind of display of what you're changing. Okay, so I'm gonna hit OK. I'm gonna hit apply. Okay. And we know that we made a new wall because if we go to the properties tab, we have our concrete wall here that we made. And our exterior wall, the one that we duplicated, is still here. It's unchanged. So now that we have the concrete wall, what I'm going to do is type WA. I'm going to do, Revit asks firstly, what's the base constraint? So this is on the ground floor. So something I did early on, before I actually do this, I'll show you. What I did when I scaled the floor plans was I made the levels. So if you are working from the base file provided, and if you go into the section, what I did was I took the drawing of the section provided, and I basically created levels from this. So your levels is in the architecture tab all the way to the right, your levels. So if I click this, just to give you guys an example, you click once and again, escape, and this creates a level. So levels in Revit are your floor plans, and Revit won't understand where you're drawing, and it won't understand sort of like how high or where something is being cut unless you do a level. So the levels are really very crucial to understand where your building is being cut. And again, I could click here. I could type 9,000, for example. It'll change. I can double click. I can change the name. Right. So this is crucial to understanding how Revit functions. Typically, you can double click. If you double click, so if I go back, if you double click the level, this little kind of window, this box, this like circle indicator, it'll open up a floor plan for you. So once it opens up a new floor plan, you get a new set of type properties that are relative to this view, and so this becomes kind of the basis for how you create floor plans. I'm not going to be using this, so I'm actually going to delete this. It's going to say, okay, it's deleting this view. We don't care right now. So I've gone ahead and I've created levels that are relative to the different floors of this project, as you can see. So if we go to the ground floor, it'll open up this view again. So if I click off, and let's say I go back. Let's say I go back to the section view. I'll click that again for you. Double click, and it opens up this floor plan. It knows right away where you want to go. Again, that could be navigated up at the top here as well. Okay, so let's get into that. So I created the wall type, so I'm going to type WA. I'm going to come here, click once, and just bring this out right to about there. I'm going to turn shadows off right now because we don't really care about shadows right now. And what I'm going to do is just move this to in the modify tab, move tool. I'm going to click the corner and just kind of do my best to just kind of align it. I'm going to use the arrow keys to just kind of nudge it ever so gently. That's just the left or right arrow keys on your keyboard. That kind of nudges it. And again, this isn't going to be completely accurate to scale, but we're going to try our best. So I'm going to do this for the rest of these walls, and I'll come back when I'm done. So now I have this boundary, and we have to create another wall type. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the same process. We're going to type WA. We're going to take our concrete wall. We're going to duplicate this first. Before I do that, I'm going to measure this wall, 210 mil. So we're going to, again, type WA, edit type here. We're going to duplicate. We're going to say like stairs wall. We're going to edit the structure. We're going to change the thickness to 210. And let's change the material to, I don't know, whatever. We can even come in here, actually, and create a new material. If you want to do that, just come here, click this little kind of dialog, create new material. You can right click and rename. So let's just say stairs wall material. And you can give it a hatch material. What I just typically do is I just give it a color because I don't really care that much about what the material looks like in Revit. All I care about is that the material ID is separated. And the process I just did right now is going to become very important later on when we do renderings. You need to get in the habit of doing this for everything, pretty much. Because if you don't do this, you're going to have a model without separated materials. And depending on how detailed your model is, it's going to be a nightmare to do that. It's always nice to do this because when you have a finished model, you can just bring it into a real-time rendering engine like D5 or Inkscape or Lumion, and you have a model with materials that you can just apply, and it's a very nice and quick process. So I'm going to click OK. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is, again, WA, and then kind of just find the boundary of this wall. Something I want to show you guys is if you have the location line here when Revit asks you where you want to draw the line. This dictates how the line, where the wall is being drawn from. So for example, if I did core face exterior, it's gonna take basically the datum line, like sort of like the middle line, and it's gonna go to the left or right of that. Just kind of play around with this, play around with these. Typically, like finished face interior works most of the time for tracing kind of things like this. But again, you can always nudge with your arrows. Something that's really important to understand early on right now is the align tool. So the align tool functions just like anything like in AutoCAD or Rhino. I'm going to type AL, shortcut AL, on your keyboard. And what I'm going to do is basically show you guys how this functions. So I'm going to turn thin lines off so you understand. So when you turn this off, you see the outlines of things better. This becomes really useful at different stages if you want more visibility. This doesn't affect how your line weights will be printed. This is kind of just this is just a temporary visibility thing in the working view, so that you can just understand pretty clearly, like if the thin lines are too thin and it's hard to see. So if I highlight this edge, I can always tab to select different edges. But just to show you guys right now, if I click this surface and then the second one that I want to bring it to, it'll guide that selection. And you can see right away an error is that these walls are not aligned. Right, so I'm going to undo. Okay, I'm going to take this edge, and when you take this edge, you know you have the edge because it does a projection the projection line shows you kind of where that plane is, and then I'm just going to grab this exterior edge. So now these are aligned. Okay, so I've done the ability to basically model the rest of the walls, the main structural walls of this building. So this is saved again as chapter 2 you'll find in the files provided in the description of the video. Just something to quickly understand about the walls. The walls in Revit are, as mentioned previously, they're based on your level height. So just to show you guys how this functions, if you go to 3D, if you tap this box at the top, you'll see what it's looking like in 3D, and you can kind of play around with the shadows. I'm just going to turn it off right now because it's a little distracting. I have a view range template turned on. Excuse that. Okay, so how walls function is when you select the wall, you see the properties light up and it tells you kind of what wall it is, and it tells you its base offset, its top offset, and the levels that it's constrained to. These are interchangeable based on what was created in the section. So if I go back to this section, you can kind of see the levels that are created here. The roof, second floor, first floor, ground floor, etc. If I go back to 3D and I say, okay, I don't want this low, I can see the base constraint is, I could say the top constraint maybe is the roof level, and the base constraint is the ground, for example, and that basically automatically changes it. You also have these kind of toggles here, which you can kind of grab them and move them around, and notice in the properties panel, as you move this around, it changes the base offset and connected height. So everything in Revit is parametric. Everything is working in tandem together all the time. So be very conscious of that as you kind of work through this model, understanding how what you're doing is kind of working together in tandem. So I'm just going to go back to 0. So we're going to move forward now, and we're going to sort of model the floors. So if I go back to the plan here, you can see that the floor plate is elevated, roughly. And we'll have to go to the section to figure out what that height might be. So what we've done here is, again, with the levels that are created, we can understand the top of the ground floor, which is already labeled for us. So if I use the measure tool and I measure this thickness, it's about 472 millimeters. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go open the ground floor plan here in the project browser. And what I'm going to do now is go to Architecture tab, floor, and just like the walls, you have like your preset floors here. I'm just going to duplicate this exterior concrete one. So we'll go edit type, duplicate, call it maybe interior 4. Edit the structure just as you would with your walls. So now you're starting to see a pattern here of how these things function. Everything in Revit operates almost everything in Revit operates with the same kind of approach. You're duplicating families, you're changing the parameters, and you're using those new parameters to basically do what you need to do. So I think that value was, what did I say, 472, maybe? I'll give this a material as well. Just as I did with the walls, or kind of same approach. I'll just name this for material. And again, feel free to explore this stuff with the appearance. You can give it an actual texture. You can kind of play around with this. I'm just giving it a color, and when I give it a color, I can even use render appearance. Sorry, hold on. So if I use render appearance, which is this parameter right here, under generic tab here, and if I click apply, okay, apply, now I have a material and color associated visually to this floor. So if I click OK and I come in here, I'll actually get out for a second. So if you go back to 4, you'll notice right away everything is grayed out now. And what Revit clues you in by showing you this X and this check mark. So now you're in edit mode. So it wants you to sketch out in 2D where you want this floor. So if you don't know where you're drawing, you can always go to 3D view. You can click show work plane. And once you click this, Revit shows you where you're drawing. This can be changed. For example, if for some reason I wanted to draw on the face of this wall, I could go set work plane, pick a plane, and I could select this. I can't select it right now because this is a floor, and Revit wants floors to be drawn horizontally. They don't want floors vertically. So Revit has kind of weird quirks like that where it wants you to do things a certain way. It has a system about how it does things, and once you understand that system, it becomes easier to do what you want to do. So I'm going to go back to first floor. Or was it ground floor? Sorry. It was ground floor. Okay. So I'm going to take a rectangle, and I'm actually just going to turn this off for a second, and I'm going to take the edge of this, where you see it on the floor plan, where the interior floor meets this partition, which is roughly about here, and we're going to bring this out and just simply drag. Once we drag and click again, and just hit escape twice, you have this purple boundary, right? So these right now are simply just 2D lines. There's no geometry yet. Revit wants you to confirm the boundary of your floor. If I were to delete one of these and hit finish, it's going to give me a warning. It's going to say the lines must be closed loops. That's saying that, of course, the boundary needs to be closed for the geometry to be created. So right now, I'm not using the right floor that I created. I'm using exterior decking. So always pay attention to your properties tab to understand what kind of geometry you're creating. I want to use the one that I created earlier, which I think didn't save. So we're gonna do that really quick one more time. I'm just gonna do the same process. 472. And again, if I'm moving quick, just kind of slow down the video, take your time with it. So I'm gonna hit OK, and then I'm gonna hit finish. And now if we go into 3D, if we go into, now we can see kind of our floor, how our floor is working. So if we go into the section, now we can kind of see that these walls need to come down to the floor here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type AL, align, and align works identical to 2D and 3D objects. So I'm going to hit the underside of this floor, which is where I want this wall to go, and then the underside of the wall. And the wall will be brought to the level of this floor. And I'm going to repeat the same process for this one. I'm going to go back into 3D, and to show this, for you guys to understand this better, I'm actually going to split the view, so you can just kind of drag these tabs and work in 2 different tabs if you feel necessary. So I'm actually going to undo, so you guys understand this better. I'm going to repeat the same process, and notice what happens in 3D. So in 3D, as you just saw, the wall in this view changed, but I was in section view. So things are changing in the model regardless of what view you're in. Whatever change you're making is going to make a change to the other views. So do keep that in mind, that this is a departure from maybe those who are coming from AutoCAD. What you're doing, the changes that you're making are, in a sense, global changes, meaning that they're changing multiple facets of the model at all times. So just keep that in mind. And also, just like some housekeeping things, if say you don't want this line here, like you don't want to see this, you can come to the Modify tab, and you can hit Join, and you can just join the wall with the floor. And it's not really necessary right now, but just to show you, if you open section, for example, and you didn't want that line, so it's just a very kind of nice little tool that will come in handy throughout the tutorial. So now what I'm going to do is get into the floors for the other levels. So let me just figure out where this is. So we have the ground. Let me just pin this back. Let me delete this, sorry. Okay. So what I can do is, if this floor is the same thickness, which I'm assuming it is, if we go back into the section, we'll understand the thickness of the floor. So your models might obstruct the image. There's a number of ways to fix that. You can right-click, hide in view. So this is going to be very crucial to understand how to hide things. So if you can right-click on anything, conversely, you can always come to this bottom tab. But for this purpose, I'm going to right-click. I'm going to go hide in view elements. That's going to hide that wall that I made, that I brought to the roof. So now I can kind of see the interior here. And if you're wondering where that wall went, if you just click this light bulb, the wall is here. So all your hidden elements are going to be revealed from this light bulb at the bottom. And once you're in the light bulb here, you'll know, because you see this red window, reveal hidden elements. You just right click on hide elements. I'm going to hide them for now, keep them hidden. I don't need them right now. And keep in mind that the things that you hide are relative to the view. So if that wall is hidden in section 3, it's not going to be hidden in the first floor or the ground floor. So keep that in mind, that things are hidden per view. So this floor is roughly the same thickness as the ground floor. So what I'm gonna do, if you want this here, what you can do, there's a number of ways to do it. You can do it in plan view, which we should probably do that, but just to show you guys, I'm gonna take the floor that we made. I'm gonna come here to the modify tab, I'm gonna copy the clipboard. I'm gonna go under paste, and then I'm gonna go aligned to picked level. Now I can select this level of the first floor, and what that did is it now created a duplicate of that floor on a new level. Okay, and we can adjust that later, but that's kind of a very quick way to assemble things. Once you have the levels, you basically just copy it to the same level and it duplicates it, and this comes in handy for things like stairs and walls and whatever. So we're gonna go into first floor, and we can see that we have a couple of things going on here. We have this wall, these two walls puncturing through. We have the stairs. So we're gonna take this floor that we duplicated on the first floor, and if it's hard to see the boundary, again, just kind of turn off thin lines. And something you can always look for is if you have the floor, your cursor is going to highlight it in blue, and you're going to see the name of it, the name of the family you created, whatever that is. Okay, so now with the floors, now what we're gonna do is on the second story, we have an open to below. So I'm just in first floor plan view. So we have an open to below. We have a cutout that we need for the stairs. So this can be done just with the edit boundary. So you can swap through different view modes, graphic display modes, to better understand what's happening. So I'm just in shaded mode because if you remember, I assigned a color to the floor. So that comes in handy now just to understand kind of the boundary. So I'm going to select the floor. I'm going to go edit boundary. And when you're in this environment, as mentioned earlier, Revit wants you to specify the boundary of your geometry. So I'm going to just sketch out this kind of boundary of the open to below. I'm going to hit escape twice, and to cut these lines, you're going to type TR, trim and extend, and you're just going to click basically the intersection of the two lines, which is going to cut the projecting line. This is pretty standard practice for AutoCAD, Rhino, and whatnot, and other 3D softwares. So if I hit finish now, it's going to say, would you like walls that go up to this floor's top with solid level to attach to its bottom? I'm going to say no. What that's talking about is just, it's saying that we have walls underneath this floor. Do we want the walls to attach to the underside of the floor? I'm going to say no, because I know from the plan that these two walls are supposed to puncture through the floor. So if we go in 3D now, you can kind of see what's happening. If I go maybe wireframe, I don't know. You can see that hole that we cut. So we're gonna repeat the same process for the stairs and whatnot. So I'm gonna go back to the view. I'm gonna go back to edit boundary. I'm gonna take a rectangle, and I'm just gonna kind of hug this as best I can. So something to know about this is if you have like a line, like that touching. Revit doesn't like that. So the lines need to be, if you're making a cut like this, if you're creating a cut hole in the boundaries need to be at a distance from each other, and they can't be intersecting. The lines cannot be intersecting. It has to be sort of one kind of closed loop piece. So I'm gonna hit finish again. So now we have a hole for our stairs and our open to below. So now I'm gonna take, you can do this a number of ways. I'm gonna show you basically how this functions in 3D. So if I want, for example, these two this wall that I created to go up to the roof, I can hit tab on my keyboard just to go. I'm gonna go hit inline so you see this. You can always just select it, but just to show you guys, let's say I'm having trouble selecting it, I can hit tab a couple times, and what tab does on your keyboard, it cycles through the different the different options of selection. So now that I have the wall, when I select it, it turns blue. So you know that you have it, and now I'm going to bring this up to the roof level in the top constraint in the properties tab. So now that I have this cutting through, you notice that it's cutting through the floor. There's a couple ways to do this. What I'm actually going to do, like the most correct way, I guess, is to go back into the floor, get back into the boundary, and just simply drag the boundary. Simple as that. Finish. Don't attach. And so now we have kind of like a pretty clean, almost clean. I'm just gonna align this edge. So now we have a pretty clean sort of opening for our stairs. Okay, so what I've gone and done is I took the liberty to kind of accurately finish the wall assemblies. I've done the floors using the previous strategy above, editing the boundaries. And yeah, what I've done for these walls is, because they kind of stretch across the floor like this, how this functions is a profile. So each wall has, or walls in Revit have the ability to edit their profile. So once I'm in this environment, just like I would if I were to sketch a floor of some sorts, it brings me back to this 2D environment where I can sketch lines on the plane of the wall, and if I finish, it will puncture through the wall. I'm going to undo that. But just to show you guys, this is the method I'm using to create something like this, where if I edit this profile, you see I've just kind of stretched this area to fit neatly. So now what we're going to do is we're going to tackle the roof structure, the roof framing, and the foundation, well, the foundation posts. So let's start with the roof. I'm going to go into section, and I'm going to figure out what this pitch is. So what I'm going to do is take a detail line, type DL. All I'm going to do is just draw a line. So these are just like your 2D, like AutoCAD lines, basically. And I'm just going to basically, I'm just going to basically click and place it roughly on this line here from the image. So it's saying it's about a 17, 18 degree slope. So